Lately, my YouTube recommendations have been absolutely flooded with videos talking about Queen Elizabeth II's final will. Many of them confidently claim that she left her most precious jewels exclusively to Catherine, the Princess of Wales. The truth is, of course, that the contents of the late Queen's will remain entirely private, and we simply do not know what is written in those documents. When a monarch passes away, the main royal collection is inherited by the new sovereign. Today, it is King Charles who holds the keys to those magnificent vaults, and his wife, Queen Camilla, naturally has the right to choose and wear pieces from this vast, historic collection. Yet, there is something quite fascinating happening right before our eyes, something that goes beyond legal inheritances. We all know there was a very special, quiet bond between the late Queen and Catherine. Throughout her long reign, Elizabeth II trusted her grandson's wife with some truly significant and important pieces from her personal collection. She didn't just open the jewelry box and let her pick. These loans always felt deliberate, as if she was sending us subtle signs. Royal jewelry is rarely just about adding a bit of sparkle to an evening gown. It is a language of its own, a way of showing favor, status, and continuity. This got me thinking. What if Queen Elizabeth II had a deliberate plan to prepare Catherine for her future role, a roadmap that extended far beyond her own lifetime? Could it be that the specific jewels King Charles is entrusting to Catherine today are actually the fulfillment of the late Queen's unwritten wishes? When I look at the Princess of Wales's recent appearances from this angle, everything seems to become much more logical and clear. It feels less like a simple choice of accessories and more like a carefully curated legacy. I find this idea incredibly touching, and it makes watching these royal events all the more special. From breathtakingly expensive wedding gifts to historic pieces that were kept entirely out of sight for decades, the choices are quite revealing, and sometimes surprisingly sentimental. I would love to know what you think of this theory as we look at the evidence together. Let's explore these beautiful treasures and see what they might be telling us about the future of the monarchy. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. In the royal family, borrowing a piece of jewelry is never a casual affair. Every loan is a carefully considered gesture. To truly grasp how this silent plan is unfolding today, our journey must begin in the years when the Queen was still with us. I always find it fascinating to observe exactly which items Elizabeth II selected for Catherine during that time. She didn't simply open the vault and offer a few beautiful diamonds. She entrusted the princess with pieces that carried a profound personal history. She chose the very jewels that marked the beginning of her own royal story, her wedding gifts. Let's look at the Greville ruby necklace. This exquisite piece, originally crafted by Boucheron in Paris back in 1907, features a delicate floral bandeau design set with rich, deep rubies and a striking pear-shaped diamond pendant. It came into the royal collection through the famous Greville bequest to the Queen Mother in 1942. But what makes it truly special is the fact that King George VI and Queen Elizabeth gave this very necklace to their daughter as a wedding present in 1947. The Queen cherished it and wore it beautifully throughout the 1950s and beyond, often pairing it with her most magnificent tiaras. Then, for many years, the rubies were tucked away. But in July 2017, Catherine stepped out wearing this spectacular necklace for the Spanish state banquet at Buckingham Palace. She paired it so elegantly with the lover's knot tiara and pearl drop earrings. I can't help but feel that handing over a wedding gift from her beloved parents was the Queen's way of quietly showing her full approval. It must have been quite a moving experience for Catherine to wear a piece carrying such warm, intimate family history. I often wonder how it feels to clasp something around your neck that meant so much to a monarch. Wouldn't you feel incredibly honored? Leaving the romantic floral curves of those rubies behind, we step into a very different kind of sparkle, one rooted in pure, geometric Art Deco glamour. When Princess Elizabeth married Prince Philip, the gifts arrived from all corners of the globe. But one present stood out for its sheer, unbelievable extravagance. The Nizam of Hyderabad, who was at the time one of the wealthiest men in the world, gave the young princess the ultimate wedding gift. He instructed Cartier in London to let her choose absolutely anything she wanted from their existing stock. What a dream that must have been! She selected a breathtaking diamond necklace created in 1935, featuring a brilliant pave-set center and a detachable double-drop pendant. In those early glamorous years of her reign, the queen wore the Nizam of Hyderabad necklace constantly. It was a signature piece of her young royal wardrobe, captured in some of her most iconic early portraits that we still recognize today. And then, just like the rubies, it rested in the vaults for decades. It wasn't until 2014 that the necklace made a grand return, this time draped elegantly around Catherine's neck for an evening gala at the National Portrait Gallery. Think about the weight of that decision for a moment. You certainly don't hand over a historic Cartier masterpiece, valued by some estimates in the tens of millions of pounds, to just an acquaintance. By letting Catherine debut this magnificent necklace for a new generation, the Queen seemed to be saying that the future of the monarchy was in very safe hands. I find the intricate diamond work on this piece so captivating. It catches the light beautifully, even in simple photographs, and the fact that the Queen trusted Catherine to bring it back to life speaks volumes. Where the Cartier diamonds dazzled with their sheer extravagance, the treasures we turn to next carry a much softer, deeply personal kind of light. Sometimes, the most significant royal loans aren't about financial value at all, but about family history and the subtle passing of the torch. Let's look at a piece that had quietly vanished from the public eye for a quarter of a century: Queen Alexandra's wedding necklace. Back in 1863, the future King Edward VII commissioned a magnificent parure from Gerard as a wedding gift for his bride, Princess Alexandra of Denmark. The pearl and diamond necklace from that set eventually became a firm favorite of the Queen Mother. She adored it and wore it for decades, right into her 90s, often pairing it with her favorite grand tiaras. Following her passing, the necklace went into the vaults and seemed to fade into history. That is, until the Dutch state banquet in 2018. When Catherine stepped into the room wearing this historic piece, perfectly coordinated with her pearl drop earrings, it was a breathtaking moment. According to royal historians, this is the oldest royal jewel loaned to the princess so far. I just love how the delicate, antique pearl clusters look on her. It feels like a perfect, elegant bridge between the glamour of the 19th century and the modern monarchy. From a grand Victorian wedding gift, our story shifts to a token of affection that was intimately close to the late Queen's heart. Lending historical heirlooms is one thing, but sharing a deeply sentimental, everyday personal item is quite another. I am talking about Prince Philip's wedding bracelet. When Philip was preparing to marry Princess Elizabeth, he took diamonds from a tiara belonging to his mother, Princess Alice, to create a beautiful, geometric bracelet for his bride. It was a true labor of love from a prince who didn't have a vast fortune at the time. Out of all the jewels in her staggering collection, Elizabeth II chose to lend Catherine this very bracelet for a gala evening. To me, this loan goes far beyond royal duty. It feels as though the Queen was welcoming Catherine into the very heart of her own love story. But not all family heirlooms carry such quiet romance. Some come with a rather more spirited past. Let's talk about the delightful lotus flower tiara. Its story begins in 1923, when the future King George VI gave his bride a pearl and diamond necklace. Interestingly, just 6 months later, she took it back to Gerard and had it dismantled to create this Egyptian-inspired Art Deco piece. It is a stunning, low-profile design featuring delicate lotus flowers and diamond arches. Decades later, the Queen Mother gave it to her younger daughter, Princess Margaret, ahead of her wedding. Margaret wore it frequently, and the tiara quickly became associated with her glamorous, slightly rebellious style throughout the swinging 60s. After Margaret passed away, the tiara disappeared back into the royal vaults. Many of us wondered who, if anyone, would wear it next. Then, to the absolute delight of royal watchers, Catherine revived it for the annual diplomatic reception in 2013, and later for the Chinese state banquet in 2015. I always try to think about the human side of these decisions. Would you easily hand over a precious family heirloom that your father commissioned for your mother, and which later became the signature piece of your adored late sister? It takes a profound level of fondness and respect to share something so deeply tied to your closest relatives. While the loans made during the Queen's lifetime were remarkable, the choices we are seeing now, in the era of King Charles, are what truly fascinate me. I often wonder how these decisions are made behind closed doors. Who exactly decides what the Princess of Wales will wear to the next state banquet? Does she browse the archives and make a request? Is it a generous offer from the King and Queen Camilla? Or perhaps it is a thoughtful, collaborative discussion among them all. We may never know the exact conversations that take place, but when I look closely at the specific jewels Catherine has stepped out in since 2022, I can't help but feel a very familiar guiding hand. It almost seems as though the family is quietly, faithfully executing the late Queen's final wishes. Stepping away from the dazzling tiaras and elaborate diamonds for a moment, let us look at something much more understated, yet perhaps far more significant: pearls. Queen Elizabeth II absolutely adored pearls. She had a wonderfully vast collection of them, including several different three-strand necklaces, and wearing them became the ultimate visual anchor of her reign. On September 17, 2022, during that deeply somber period of national mourning, Catherine joined the family to host a lunch for the Governors General of the Commonwealth. Around her neck rested a beautiful, slightly longer three-strand pearl necklace, which was confirmed to be from the late Queen's personal collection. At the time, it felt like a beautiful, poignant tribute from a grieving granddaughter-in-law. It was the perfect, respectful choice for such a sad occasion. But the story of this specific necklace didn't end with the mourning period. Catherine wore it again for the Festival of Remembrance in November 2023, standing on a balcony in quiet reflection. And then came a very special recent occasion. Just a few days ago, on April 21, 2026, the royal family gathered at Buckingham Palace for a reception to celebrate what would have been the centenary of Queen Elizabeth II's birth. For such a joyful look back at the monarch's life, Catherine once again reached for these exact pearls. This tells us something rather important. This is clearly not a short-term, one-off loan from the king. It seems this elegant piece of the Queen's legacy has been passed into Catherine's long-term care, allowing her to embrace the classic three-strand pearl look as her own working uniform. I find it so incredibly moving to see this visual continuity. But that classic three-strand necklace isn't the only pearl legacy the late Queen passed down. Elizabeth II also entrusted Catherine with pieces designed to elevate entirely different moments, from daytime elegance to grand diplomatic statements. Take the Bahrain pearl drop earrings, for instance. Their story goes all the way back to the very beginning of Elizabeth's royal life. The pearls were a wedding gift from the Hakim of Bahrain in 1947. The Queen wore them beautifully in the early years of her reign, but since she loaned them to Catherine in 2016, the Princess of Wales has completely made them her own. We see her wearing them constantly for all kinds of daytime appearances. They have become her absolute go-to. It is so wonderful to see how effortlessly Catherine has turned a 1940s wedding gift into a versatile, modern daily staple. For moments that require a bit more presence and structural elegance, Catherine reaches for another of the Queen's unique treasures, the Japanese pearl choker. Commissioned by Elizabeth II from pearls gifted by the Japanese government in the 1970s, this four-strand choker with its curved diamond clasp is a true statement piece. While the Queen first loaned it to Catherine back in 2017, it is how the princess uses it today that I find so fascinating. She doesn't just reserve it for solemn occasions. She has confidently worn it to the Scottish coronation celebrations in 2023, during the Qatar state visit in late 2024, and for the Commonwealth Day service. By placing this specific necklace in her care, it feels as though the Queen gave Catherine the perfect tool to command a room with true modern grace. Leaving the soft glow and elegant geometry of pearls behind, our story shifts to a much grander sparkle, a romantic treasure that had been sleeping in the dark for nearly a century. If you follow royal events closely, You likely remember the collective gasp from royal watchers during the South Korean state banquet in November 2023. Catherine arrived wearing the Strathmore Rose tiara, a piece we had not seen in public since the 1930s. Its history is incredibly sweet. It was a wedding gift to the Queen Mother from her father, the Earl of Strathmore, in 1923. It features delicate wild roses in a beautiful, naturalistic 1920s floral design. After the Queen Mother stopped wearing it in her youth, it seemed to simply vanish into the archives. King Charles was famously devoted to his grandmother, so one might naturally wonder why he didn't offer this deeply sentimental family heirloom to Queen Camilla. I suspect it comes down to a careful understanding of personal style and legacy. Camilla beautifully carries the weight of grand, substantial jewels, but the delicate, romantic architecture of these 1920s roses felt as though it was waiting specifically for Catherine. Seeing it brought back to life on the Princess of Wales was like opening a time capsule. The next jewel we need to discuss is an absolute triumph of modern, sharp brilliance. I am talking about the Greville diamond chandelier earrings. Originally crafted by Cartier over several years between 1918 and 1929, they are a true masterpiece of craftsmanship, featuring a mesmerizing mix of baguette, baton, emerald, and pear-shaped diamonds. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth gave them to their daughter, the future queen, as a wedding gift in 1947. There is actually a rather charming detail about this specific gift. When the young Princess Elizabeth received them, she did not have pierced ears. The earrings had to wait in her jewelry box for a few years until the summer of 1951, when she finally had her ears pierced, just so she could wear them. They became a staple of her glamorous early reign, accompanying her on state visits and royal tours throughout the 1950s and 60s. Then, for the most part, they rested quietly in the royal collection. But in 2023, Catherine debuted them at the spectacular royal wedding in Jordan. Since then, we have seen her reach for them again for the French state banquet in 2025, and most recently on the red carpet at the BAFTA Awards in February 2026. Every time Catherine wears them, I feel as though I can sense the late Queen's guiding hand. Elizabeth adored these earrings in her own youth, and seeing Catherine confidently claim them as her new power jewelry feels like a brilliant, sparkling endorsement from the past. Have you noticed how Catherine's style has gently evolved to embrace these bolder historical pieces? It truly feels as if she is stepping into her future role, one diamond at a time. Our next jewel represents an absolute turning point in Catherine's royal journey. For me, this is the most compelling piece of evidence that a silent plan is truly in motion. Late last year, in December 2025, the royal family hosted a magnificent state banquet for the German president at Windsor Castle. When the Princess of Wales arrived, it was a moment of sheer astonishment for royal historians. Resting beautifully in her hair was the spectacular oriental circlet tiara, a piece that had not been seen in public for 2 decades. The history of this diadem is as romantic as its design. It was carefully dreamed up by Prince Albert for Queen Victoria in 1853, heavily inspired by the intricate Mughal arches and lotus flowers he admired at the Great Exhibition. Originally set with opals, the tiara was later updated with vibrant rubies by Queen Alexandra. But what makes this jewel so incredibly significant is the stipulation Queen Victoria attached to it upon her death. She designated it as an heirloom, specifically instructing that it was to be worn by future queens in right of it. For decades, it was a signature piece for the Queen Mother, and later, Queen Elizabeth II wore it during a memorable visit to Malta. This brings us to a fascinating question. Queen Camilla now has full access to the royal vaults. We know she has a wonderful affinity for the grand, substantial jewels that once belonged to the Queen Mother, and she certainly has the presence to carry them beautifully. Yet, when Camilla required a ruby tiara for formal occasions, she chose the late Queen's modern Burmese ruby tiara instead. Why did the oriental circlet, a piece so heavily steeped in history and so closely associated with the Queen Mother, bypass Camilla entirely and go directly to the Princess of Wales? It is a remarkable departure from tradition, considering Catherine is currently a queen-in-waiting, not yet a queen consort. Such a seismic shift in royal protocol could not possibly happen without King Charles's blessing. But I also firmly believe this choice carries the quiet, undeniable echo of Elizabeth II's wishes. To allow Catherine to wear a tiara, historically meant only for queens, is the loudest, most powerful confirmation of her future status. It isn't just a beautiful array of diamonds and rubies, it is a clear message to the world that she is entirely ready for the role that awaits her. Don't you agree that this feels like the ultimate vote of confidence? With the oriental circlet now stepping gracefully into a new era, our minds naturally drift to the heavy, velvet-lined drawers of the royal vaults that remain securely locked. What else is sleeping in the dark, waiting for the right moment, and the right woman, to bring it back to the light? I love to look ahead and think about the treasures that seem destined to be a part of Catherine's future. There are certain pieces that feel like they have her name quietly whispered on their history. Let us delve into a truly spectacular survivor, the Grand Duchess Vladimir tiara. Its story reads like the pages of a gripping historical novel. Originally belonging to Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna of Russia, the jewel was caught in the turmoil of the 1917 revolution. When the Grand Duchess was forced to flee St. Petersburg, her magnificent jewels were left behind, locked away in a hidden safe within the Vladimir Palace. It was a perilous time, yet her son, Grand Duke Boris, alongside a British friend named Bertie Stopford, hatched a daring plan. Disguising themselves as workmen, they managed to sneak into the palace and smuggle the dazzling pieces out of Russia, hidden in 2 plain Gladstone bags. Queen Mary eventually purchased the slightly damaged piece in 1921. It features the most breathtaking design of 15 interlocking diamond circles. Queen Mary, always the visionary with her jewels, ingeniously adapted it so that the original pear-shaped pearls could be swapped out for the magnificent Cambridge emeralds. For decades, it was one of the absolute favorites of Queen Elizabeth II. It was a true labor of love, and the late Queen wore it to her very last diplomatic reception in 2019. Now, we have seen Queen Camilla reach for emeralds, but she chose the magnificent Greville emerald kokoshnik. Why has the Vladimir remained unseen? This brings me to my favorite theory. I suspect this incredibly important piece is being carefully reserved for the Princess of Wales. Catherine is famously devoted to pearls, and the sweeping, pearl-dropped version of this diadem would frame her face beautifully. Yet, she also looks absolutely striking in rich greens. The thought of Catherine arriving at a future state banquet, the Cambridge emerald swinging gently within those diamond loops, is simply mesmerizing. It feels like the perfect, weighty piece for a future queen consort. Next, we gently descend to a style of jewelry that hasn't graced a royal neck in generations. If you look closely at Catherine's style, you cannot help but notice her elegant swan-like neck. It is the perfect canvas for a very specific historical type of jewel, the high-structured choker. There is one piece in particular that has been hiding from the public eye for well over a century. It is Queen Mary's Love Trophy Collar. Commissioned by Mary back in 1901, it is a delicate, intricate masterpiece formed of brilliant set diamond panels. Each panel contains a tiny amatory trophy, a quiver of arrows, a torch, and a bow, surrounded by a laurel wreath and suspended from a diamond ribbon. It is incredibly romantic, yet completely forgotten by modern royals. However, just a year ago, in April 2025, it suddenly emerged from the darkness for the Edwardians Age of Elegance exhibition at Buckingham Palace. Seeing it there, gleaming under the display lights, made me wonder if the royal curators are gently reminding us of its existence. Alongside it in the historical archives is another masterpiece, Queen Alexandra's Cartier Collier Réseau. Commissioned in 1904, it was designed as a breathtaking diamond fishnet choker, originally adorned with ruby and emerald drops. Queen Alexandra famously wore it for an iconic portrait by François Flameng, paired with the legendary Koh-i-Noor diamond. Queen Mary later updated the necklace with diamonds, but the exquisite web-like structure remains. We have not seen this piece worn since Queen Mary's reign. I know that fashion has evolved tremendously since the rigid collars of the Edwardian era, and such high necklaces can be quite demanding to wear. But if there is one woman in the modern royal family who possesses the poise and structural confidence to revive this long-lost silhouette, it is Catherine. I am putting this wish out into the cosmos, hoping the palace stylists might just hear it. It would be such a thrilling nod to the past to see these forgotten collars brought back to life. While we are sending wishes into the universe, let us turn to a gemstone that has been surprisingly absent from royal galas in recent decades. It is time to talk about the Kent amethysts. This is actually one of the oldest sets of jewelry in the entire royal collection. The demi-parure originally belonged to Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, the Duchess of Kent and mother to Queen Victoria, back in the 1820s. Following her mother's death, Queen Victoria noted in her journal how she carefully divided her beloved mama's jewels, declaring this fine amethyst and diamond parure an heirloom of the crown. It features massive, deep purple hexagonal amethysts surrounded by intricate diamond scrolls and sunbursts. During her reign, Queen Elizabeth II mostly wore just the central brooch, often detaching its 3 delicate diamond and amethyst pendants for her daytime engagements. The matching necklace, earrings, and hair combs were left safely tucked away, making only the rarest of appearances, such as during a state visit to Portugal in 1985. Amethysts seem to have fallen out of favor within the House of Windsor lately, but think about how spectacular this deep, velvety purple would look today. The Swedish royal family regularly brings out their magnificent Napoleonic amethyst parure for grand banquets, proving that the stone can still command a room. The Princess of Wales frequently wears rich jewel tones, plums, berries, and deep blues. The sheer scale and historical weight of the Kent amethysts would be a phenomenal addition to her evening wardrobe. Bringing out the full parure, perhaps even finding a way to utilize those mysterious antique hair combs in one of her signature intricate updos, would be a breathtaking tribute to the women who laid the foundations of the modern monarchy. These stones have quietly witnessed 2 centuries of royal history. It feels only right that they should be allowed to sparkle in the next. Leaving the grand, sweeping scale of historic parures and state banquets behind, our final jewel takes us into the very heart of the royal family. Sometimes, the smallest pieces in the collection carry the heaviest emotional weight. From the blinding brilliance of diamonds meant for the world stage, we gently turn to a delicate, colorful little basket of gemstone flowers. This is the flower basket brooch, and its story is wonderfully tender. In 1948, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth gave this sweet piece to their daughter to celebrate the birth of her very first child, Prince Charles. The young Princess Elizabeth proudly wore this floral tribute in the first official photographs with her newborn son, capturing a moment of pure, quiet joy. The brooch remained a cherished staple throughout her reign, but it made a truly profound reappearance 65 years later. In 2013, the Queen deliberately chose to wear this exact same brooch for the christening of Prince Charles's first grandson, Prince George. By wearing it, she created a beautiful, unspoken link between her own firstborn and the little boy who would one day follow in his footsteps. Now, let us look far down the road to a day that is still years away. Think of the moment when Prince George eventually welcomes his own first child, the next future heir. I must admit, this thought always brings a little tear to my eye. Just think of Catherine stepping out to greet the cameras on that christening day, wearing this very brooch. A piece of jewelry that welcomed Charles in 1948 and George in 2013, perfectly chosen to welcome an entirely new generation. It would be such an exquisite way to honor the past, allowing the circle of family history to close beautifully. These are the moments that make royal jewelry so much more than just precious stones. They are the silent witnesses to history, carrying the love, duty, and quiet intentions of the women who care for them. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Do you think there is a grain of truth to this theory of the late Queen's silent, unwritten plan? I would absolutely love to hear your perspective on this. And of all the sleeping beauties we have looked at today, from the dramatic Vladimir diadem to those elegant Edwardian diamond collars, which forgotten treasure do you dream of seeing Catherine revive next? Please let me know in the comments below. I always look forward to reading your wonderful insights. Thank you so much for joining me today for a lovely chat about our favorite royal treasures.